In this screencast, I will explain what a recurring event filter is and how to set a recurring event filter up. Most of the time, we're trying to intercept and monitor events and get notified when those events happen. But every once in a while, especially for tasks that recur and that occur every day or on a fixed schedule, every hour, once a day, once a week, we don't necessarily want to get notified every time those events happen. Instead, we want to be notified if they don't happen. This helps us keep the number of alerts we receive as little as possible, and only sends us the relevant information, meaning we want to know when this particular event, maybe a backup, for example, did not occur. So let's take a look at this. So what I set up on this host here is set up a Windows backup. I just a few minutes ago ran a Windows backup that backed up just a few files, and the backup only took a few seconds. And we're going to set up a recurring event filter that will look for these backup events during a certain time frame and let us know if the backup did not occur or if it did not finish successfully. So if you look at the applications and services logs here, we have a list of the most recently used applications and services event logs, and the Windows backup log is here. We only have 6 events here, like I mentioned earlier. We only ran a couple of backups here. And here we have 2 sets of backups. The first backup, which was interrupted and failed, and we have an error event here. And then we have the second backup, which started at 5:42 p.m. and it was successful. You'll see here that it only took about 4 seconds, which is unusually short for a backup, but in this particular case I just backed up the boot sector and a couple of other minor files for test purposes. So what is in a recurring event filter and how do we set it up? A recurring event filter is set up just like any other event in EventSentry, except that with recurring event filters we utilize, and I'm going to just peek here at one of the warning events here, we utilize the hour date tab here, and in particular the recurring event option. But before we go into this, let's start from the basics. Whenever we want to create a new event filter, we're going to start most of the time with a new package. So we'll create a new package here and we'll call it backup test01, which is the name of this test computer here. And we'll assign that package just to this computer here. So we have a package that's assigned correctly. Our next step would be to create the recurring event filter. Now let's go back to the event log that we were looking at earlier. When the backup is complete, so Windows, as we can see here, logs 3 events during a regular backup. We have event ID number 1, the backup operation started, and backup operation is finished, number 4, and number 4, it has completed. Now it will be up to you to decide which one to pick, but I'm going to pick the last one, which is the backup operation has completed. As a matter of fact, I'm going to revert this. Now we are going to look at the backup event ID number 4, which indicates that the backup operation is finished successfully. The backup operation is completed. It will always be logged even if the backup failed. So the event of interest is this particular event. The backup operation is finished successfully. So we would like to create a filter for that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll forward this event to an action. We click this button here, and we're not going to forward it to an action, of course, because we don't want to get an alert unless it did not occur. But nevertheless, this link here allows us to create a filter. I'm going to pick the package which we set up just before backup test01, and we'll call this daily backup finished, daily backup success, and we'll click OK. So most of the information here has been filled in. We have an include event here, looking for an informational event with event ID number 4, the name of the event source here, the backup, and also the username. Now we'll notice here that the event log is not checked, and that's because the Windows backup event is in a custom event log in one of the applications and services logs. Is not shown here. Instead, we click the More button and we'll see that the Microsoft Windows backup log here is selected. It's already selected. It's already present in this list by default, so all we have to do is check this checkbox. A quick overview over the custom event logs. Here you have the ability to define any sort of custom event log that's present on the system, and then check the box if you want to monitor that log. The only thing to keep in mind here is any sort of changes you make to the ordering of the event logs here is going to be reflected in every filter that uses them. So it's generally not recommended to change the ordering unless you know for sure that no other filter is using it. But the checkboxes, of course, are local to only this filter. So if you clear or check this box, that only applies to this particular filter here. So this filter is almost complete. Normally, with a filter, we would add an action here, for example, default email, and we would get an email when the backup is complete. There's nothing wrong with that, and of course, you could still set it up that way, but we're going to go a step further. We're going to say we don't want to get an email when it's done because it finishes successfully most of the time. There's no reason to get an email every day. Tell us that the backup was successful when it finishes successfully, 360 days out of the year, or hopefully more, of course. So instead, we're going to go to the hour and day tab, and we're going to switch this to a recurring event. So the recurring event now lets us specify when we expect this event to happen. We're going to hit the plus icon, and we're going to say, in this particular case, let's pretend that this backup starts at 1 a.m. in the morning and ends usually at around 3 a.m. So we're going to check every day here. Of course, we're not going to say all day. Let's say the backup runs from 1 a.m. let's say to 5 a.m. And this is a regular recurring backup schedule. We could also switch it to interval if a particular event occurs every minute or 5 minutes to make sure this event is occurring. So now we have a recurring schedule set up every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's a backup running between 1 and 5 o'clock. EventSentry at 5 o'clock will let us know if the event that we have specified here on the General tab, Microsoft Windows Backup ID number 4, has not occurred between 1 and 5 a.m. in the morning. You'll also notice here that the list of actions is gone here, because what this filter will do at 5 o'clock in the morning, if the event did not occur, is it will log an error to the Windows event log. And it is then up to one of the generic filters here, for example, email critical events or EventSentry errors, to forward that event to an action like email, desktop notification, and so forth. So that's all there's to it for a recurring event filter. We'll just define what are we looking for and when should this event occur. You'll also notice here the little informational blue bubbles up there. They're indicating that this particular feature in this tab has been configured. So if you revisit this filter later, you know immediately once you get here that it has some hour-day settings, like a recurring event, for example, and that a custom event log is checked over there. Another thing that commonly happens during a backup is that the CPU, memory, or disk space are a little bit more utilized than normally, and you may encounter and you may get alerts from EventSentry telling you that the CPU usage is high, that the average disk length is high, and so forth. So what we can also do then in the same package in which we're looking for the recurring event, for the backup event, is to also add an exclusion for performance event. And to do this easily, we'll navigate here to Performance System. So here's where we usually configure our performance counters. And of course, we don't want to touch those or change those. We'll leave those as is. But what we'll say is, while the backup is running between 1 and 5 a.m. in the morning, we don't want to get notified if there is any sort of performance issue. And there's two things we can do. We could either wait for the alerts to happen, go to the event viewer, just like we did before, right-click the event, for example this one here, and add an exclude filter. We can also navigate over here and click the alerts button. So this will allow us to go in and set up a filter. So let's go here to the backup test 1. So we want to select an event log package that already exists so we can group everything nicely together. We're going to say we want to have the default email action be affected, and we'll just call it performance alerts. What we'll do is we'll change this though. We'll change it to exclude backup performance alerts. So EventSentry didn't do very much here. All it did was it created an include filter with EventSentry as a source and performance monitoring as a category. What we'll do is we'll switch this to an exclusion. The icon changes because we want to exclude events. We're going to switch off the informational event because they're usually warnings or errors. And we'll have to refine this event a little bit further because right now this filter would exclude any sort of performance alert on this test machine, and of course we only want to exclude them during the backup. So we'll head back to our Day tab, and in this case, because it's an exclude filter, we can't choose the schedule type. Only the regular schedule type is allowed, supported. So we hit plus here, and again we'll check every day. Click clear all day long, and we'll say between 1 and 5 a.m. So what we did is we changed this filter. Instead of being active all day long, it's only going to be active from 1 to 5 in the morning. And you can see this here. It says filter behavior during below schedules active, which means otherwise it would be inactive. So we want that filter to only be active, since it's an exclusion filter, to only be active between 1 and 5 a.m. in the morning. Also note that whenever we add a schedule to a filter, a little clock here gets added to the icon, indicating that there's a schedule associated with that filter. For a recurring event, the icon changes altogether, and instead of the arrow, we get a little round circle arrow here. And that's really all we need to do to set this up. So now we have a backup. Now we'll get notified 5 a.m. if the backup didn't occur, and we can also exclude performance alerts that are generated by EventSentry during that time period. The performance data is still collected. We could still review it at a later time. The alerts are still going to be in the event log, but we won't get notified of them. And the last note here, what does the event look like when the backup didn't occur, when the recurring event is triggered? Let's head over to the Tools section. We have the Event Message Browser. In the application event log under EventSentry here, we have a few of the recurring event filters here. In this particular case, it is the 10.6.20 event. And what we have here, this is the event that's being logged by EventSentry. The event will say it will be logged with the event ID of 10620, and this is all documented in the help file, of course. It says no event matching filter, and that will be showing the name of the filter. Has occurred in the event log in the configured time period. According to the schedule, at least one event matching filter, and again the name, should have been logged during the last %2, which is going to be replaced with the number of minutes. In our particular case, since our backup spans 4 hours, it will be 240 minutes. So that would be the event that's being logged at the end of that time period. If the event is logged, if the backup does complete successfully, EventSentry will not log anything, and you won't get notified. If you still want to know or confirm that the event has occurred, I recommend that you set up a report in the web reports and schedule that report to run maybe once a week, where you can review all the backup jobs that were running on your servers, for example. That way you don't have to get a lot of emails in your inbox from every server, but you can get one consolidated report once a week, twice a week, to make sure all the backups are running successfully. But still get notified in the morning immediately if the backup did not run. Thanks for watching.